I think we all can admit that even for a seasoned GM, crunchy ttrpgs are super intimidating to run. Too many stats, too many rules, and too much time spent flipping through the book instead of actually playing at the table with your buds. But I found a way to make it work with the help of my secret weapon, GPT. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. So welcome back to Guys Night Gaming, where we play games and make things. If you find this video useful at all, and you want to help support the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell notification, and another pro tip, like the video and share it to any GMs or future GMs or players if you think they might find it useful. It's much appreciated. So today is a doozy. If you're a GM or you plan to GM, grab a notepad, because we got some good ones here. So you and your group are looking to play a new tabletop RPG. You're afraid to start anything that looks too hard with all the rolls, modifiers, etc. Well, I'll go over my strategy today as a GM and my group's play to help make that kind of thing with super crunchy tabletop RPG more manageable. Note that these tips can be used with any tabletop RPG. Alright, so I'm going to break this video down into 3 separate sections so you can jump to whichever section appeals most to you and you would think most is most informative. So first, GM prep. This is before the game. In-game adjustments during your play. And then my secret weapon that I mentioned earlier, ChatGPT. Let's dive in at the beginning. For GM prep, the secret to making a crunchy game manageable starts before the game even begins. Here's what I do to keep my games running somewhat smoothly. They can go off the rails sometimes. While running Cyberpunk 2020 in the Forlorn Hope adventure book, it gives you stat blocks for almost every NPC, good and bad, that the players are set to encounter. All of these stat blocks are chock full of details to flesh out the NPC, but the truth is, most of these details aren't even needed. The majority of the NPCs that are within the book are going to be enemies, and let's be honest, they're going to get flatlined before the night ends. So we don't need them to do a whole lot of things. So, like, why is this guy that is just a guard have a driving skill of 5? He's just getting into a gunfight. He's not driving anywhere. Solution. When you're making or copying an NPC stats, only take what you need for the moments they'll be in. So gunfight, take the gun stats, that kind of thing. If you find yourself needing something outside of what you've recorded on your sheet, nobody knows, so just make it up when you need to make a roll. Another part of GM prep that cannot be overlooked is quick reference sheets. So 9 times out of 10, we're running combat scenarios in Cyberpunk 2020. However, if you've ever laid eyes on that rule book, you know that all the combat rules, they're not in a central location. They are throughout the entire book. So you have to flip back and forth. It's ridiculous. You can't deal with this kind of thing mid-game, or you'll be sitting there all night doing nothing for 3 or 4 hours. I know, because our first few sessions, we did exactly that. It's a super fun way to spend time with the guys. Our solution to this. So at first I decided to type up a printout of reference sheet for the combat. For combat, it was specifically ranged combat. My first attempt wasn't quite up to snuff, and I just so happened to have another buddy and a local GM within the group who likes to take the initiative, and he created and printed out these beautiful sheets for everybody at the table to reference every time we play. These sheets are invaluable. They centralize all the combat rules, or the major ones, the weapons, modifiers for super quick reference during the gameplay. Another one that I like to employ in just about any tabletop that we do, and I think it's a pretty common one, when you start cutting resource management. is pretty common, like I said, in GMing quickly, and this is to reduce the resource management for players and GMs. I mean, it just cuts time, it cuts bookkeeping. Like in Cyberpunk 2020, we don't track ammo for anybody. And there are 3 major reasons for that, besides the bookkeeping that it creates. Creates more work, not fun work either. We're never in combat long enough for that to even matter. Combat is super deadly. We don't need to track ammo. Every mission that we go on, the players are always supplied with guns and ammo. So why would we need to keep track of it? This is something more suited for like a homebrew or kind of a sandboxy play in Cyberpunk, not something that's mission to mission. And one last tip I have here for the pre-gaming prep is deciding which NPC actions you can automate. Sometimes when you're playing tabletop RPGs, too many options can actually become a time sink, and then you are RPing with a merchant too hard with the players, and then soon you're 2 hours in and you haven't got anything done and nobody's bought anything from the merchant. They're just accusing him of being some evil lord or something. In our case, some gang leader in Cyberpunk. So we just want to kind of avoid that sort of thing. So we take away options and we automate things. My solution for that, by automating NPC actions that would otherwise rely on player actions or roles, you remove that part of the play or time in favor of moving the story forward in a timely manner. In our next mission, for example, we have a guy, his name is Crazy Bob, he's an informant, and the players will have an opportunity to talk to him and get him to come on their mission with him. Well, I'm scrapping that altogether because we don't need that interaction. It doesn't really matter. Either way, he shows up again in the story anyways, so I'm going to cut that, save time, in favor for him showing up later in the story anyways. Boom, we've saved time. Now, we go into in-game adjustments. Alright, so GM prep is one thing, but what about during the game? Here's how I keep things moving at the table. Timers for combat is a very, very special tool, I think, that doesn't get utilized enough. This is a pretty simple one, but it's one that I don't use it all the time because it creates certain moments. I use this when I want to set a specific tone for the session or battle, or when I want to move things along to finish within the night. I've done this mostly with a physical timer, like on my phone, and setting in minutes. This amps up the pace dramatically because your players got to make decisions right then and there. But it can also be done with the simple roll of the dice. Roll a d4, you get a 4. Okay, in 4 rounds, something's going to happen, so you better hurry up. Whenever you roll, it can take a little bit longer because then they take their time during the rounds, but it is a good way to put some pressure on the players. Second, I let players track some of their own things, so I don't have to do much bookkeeping. When you're GMing a game like Cyberpunk 2020, you're bound to have a lot of things to track when you have all the NPCs and if there's anything else going on. After you factor in all these enemy NPCs, friendly NPCs, initiatives, weapons, damage dealt, etc., you've got all these things on the table. You've got a lot going on, so if you throw in anything else like an NPC, say, and they're teamed up with one of your players, they can take track of it. Or if they are playing and we end up having vehicles, whoever's driving that vehicle, they get to keep track of it. I'm not going to sit there and keep track of all the vehicles. They can definitely do it, and that saves a lot of time for me and in the gameplay. Another cool one that I've utilized before in tabletop RPGs is minions to give a certain feel for battles as well. So minions is something that came from 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Not that enemies in Cyberpunk 2020 last very long anyways. If you manage to get a shot, you've got 1 to 2 shots that you can take before the NPC is making stun saves or death saves. They get messed up real fast. This next session, however, we have some unique encounters, and I want to give the feel of a lot of guys, but I don't want to track all that stuff. So I'm going to use the minion rule from 4th edition D&D, and we do what we do is we just give them 1 shot to be killed. So if they take any kind of damage, they're killed regardless of the damage dealt. This speeds up things during combat, and it gives the feeling of like slaughtering pretty much a ton of enemies at once or in a round. And before I've used this in D&D in like a temple and stuff for enemies to launch like a sacrifice to open portals and stuff, and that specifically, they had to spill so much blood, so they had to kill so many minions and stuff, and they just kept coming and coming. It ended up turning into a pretty neat encounter. So it's a good one to employ, and the way you track everything with just the 1 health, it makes it super fast and easy. Then our last one for in-game. So Cyberpunk 2020 has lots of modifiers, and I have read various places that is because they want to make it cinematic. Well, you don't need to add modifiers to make it cinematic. I choose narration over modifiers. This one hits hard with Cyberpunk 2020. So during the combat phase, Friday Night Fight system with Cyberpunk 2020, it's touted as being realistic. You die fast. It's cinematic combat. You're doing rolls. You're running, shooting from the hip. All this stuff. What this means is that we have to add a lot of different things to a single combat action, like shooting. All these different modifiers. Are you running? Are they running? Are they a small target? Are you shooting from the hip? Are you aiming? All this stuff is there for you to check and add the modifiers or subtract. I mean, look at this giant modifier list, and this isn't even all of them. Do we need all this? Absolutely not. Does it help with creating some cinematic moments? Kind of. It kind of just slows things down. Mostly we just skip these and narrate what our characters were doing. We do use some of them, but mostly we skip them. All of these things keep the session flowing without sacrificing any of the fun. But as I said, I don't do all this alone. I use AI, specifically ChatGPT, to handle a lot of the prep work for me. And I gotta say, it is a massive game changer. If you are not using this, you are handicapping yourself intentionally. You're basically GMing with 2 hands behind your back. So let's break down what I use ChatGPT for in most cases. So it's easy to simplify rules on demand. With a game like Cyberpunk 2020, you're bound to have multiple scenarios in a single night that are going to require that you jump around this ridiculously written rulebook. This can be a big waste of time, and it definitely is, unless if you have tabs and you're very fast at flipping. And furthermore, hard to understand with how poorly the rulebook is actually written. So my solution is based on the mission. I need melee combat rules, then vehicle combat rules, then gun rules. Let's say, for example, I asked ChatGPT, grab these rules for me. They find the rules. I can copy paste them directly into my Google Doc that I keep my session notes in. At a section where these combats are actually happening. So as I'm going through the session, those rules are there when I need them. It's super simple and super easy. Also, ChatGPT is free. Another thing we can do is we can generate characters, dialogues, and settings of any kind. You're running a homebrew campaign and you need to fill out some baddies for your characters to fight. It takes a lot of time to define a good NPC enemy or good guy that can carry the weight of being the main bad guy or a buddy. Each character needs stats, gear, a personality, a look, etc. Solutions here: with a simple idea, I can create almost any character I can think of with complete stats and gear. An example here is I wanted a brawler, and I didn't want him to be totally evil. We can go a step further and develop an outline for the reasonings for being bad or being the way they are. Connections within a story if you're homebrewing, and just about anything else. And literally, as fast as you can type, this will pop up and give you options. Possibly one of the most useful things ChatGPT can do for Cyberpunk 2020 is tweaking game mechanics. Some of them are very convoluted. So one of my favorite ways to use ChatGPT for any tabletop RPG game is to break down the game mechanics. Sometimes with a crunchy tabletop RPG like Cyberpunk 2020, you can get bogged down with the structure of the rules, even if you're familiar with them. The solution here is to take those rules, tweak them in ChatGPT to speed up combat situations for in-game play. For example, our next session, I have some vehicle combat in our next mission. It's pretty unique, with waves of enemy cars coming, hitting enemies on the streets and groups waiting to ambush and blast the players from roadblocks. Well, by tweaking the vehicle combat rules and the movement and size of the vehicles to match my grid, the vehicle combat can be faster. We can create urgency in the combat and get through the mission in a single night. This tool takes a ton of pressure off of prepping your session, and it really starts to make the wheels turn in your head. Like, what else can I use this for tabletop RPGs? I'm telling you now, if you're not using it, you are handicapping yourself. Crunchy tabletop RPGs don't have to be a slog. You just need to know what to simplify, what to automate, and when to let go of rules that don't serve the story. For me, AI is just another tool in the GM toolkit. Like dice, like rule books, like quick reference sheets. So if you're running a crunchy game, don't be afraid to break down and make it work for you. And if you need a little help, well, now you've got some tools in your belt to utilize. If this helped you, let me know down in the comments what your biggest struggles with running a crunchy game would be. Maybe let me know how much you hate or like AI. Subscribe, like, and share the video, of course. It always helps us out. I hope you learned something today, and I hope you play something soon, and I will see you next time.